You are probably here because you have a spouse or partner who is not on board with budgeting or debt payoff, or even just spending money wisely. You're probably here because you've fought, you've cried, and you are really just fed up with it. I will be super honest and transparent with you. I have been there. I've cried over our budget. I've cried by myself. I've cried to my spouse, and I have threatened to shove it all in the trash and just to give up because I was so frustrated that we were not on the same page with money. And all of this happened while I was budgeting on YouTube. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Mary. This is Pennies Not Perfection, where we are budgeting and earning more money and achieving a better financial future. However, this is not how it's always been. And we had a lot of fights, even once I started budgeting publicly on this channel. So today I want to talk to those of you who are super excited about budgeting and paying off debt and saving money and creating a better financial life free of stress and worry, but you have a partner that's not on board. I've been wanting to create this video for a while because I know how that is. And a lot of the advice I see and hear from some of the other people out there is just like not helpful because you can do all the right things and you can take your partner to FPU and you can show them stuff and it just doesn't click. So I want to talk to you, those of you out there that are kind of just stuck and getting really frustrated. And please know that one or more of these tips might not apply in your situation or it might not work for you, but maybe one will. So take what works and what you think might work and leave the rest. Try different things, attack it from different avenues. It might not work the first time, and it might take a while to get your partner on board. So if you have a reluctant spouse, just know that sometimes some spouses are more reluctant than others, and it can take longer to get on the same page with money. Number one, have an honest conversation with your partner about money and why you want to do stuff like budgeting and paying off debt without nagging, guilting, shaming, or blaming. If you cannot have an honest conversation without resorting to that frustration and fear-based conversation where you nag or yell, then shut it down and try again later. You have to have an honest conversation where you're not blaming the other person and you're not struggling through the conversation, making them feel worse. I'll be honest, likely they already know and they already feel all those feelings. So having you bring them up again and shove it in their face isn't gonna get them on board. Nothing like that usually works. People are not usually motivated by shame. Some people are motivated by fear, but not everyone is. And trying to motivate by those negative emotions isn't really gonna get you far. So if you can't get through that honest first conversation about why this is so important and why this matters to you, shut it down and try a different route. Maybe write an email, maybe write a letter, maybe write something that's edited so that you can either read it to your spouse or you can send it to them and they can read it and digest and maybe come back. Sometimes we have had to go to a place where we had to write down things instead of talking to each other because we both got so defensive about how we felt and how we thought the other person was doing it wrong, that the conversations were not productive. And having the same unproductive conversation about money over and over and over again does no good. It doesn't get anyone on board and it doesn't help. So stop doing it. Stop having the same conversation and have the one honest conversation about why it matters and why it's important, and then let it go. Okay, once you've done that, I want you to focus on the wins and the positive stuff that is working with your money. Instead of constantly nagging and feeling that unproductive conversation that's at a standstill where you're both frustrated and angry, focus on the positive stuff. Focus on the ways that you handled money well. Focus on what worked. Even if everything is terrible and your life is falling apart financially, there's probably one tiny thing that is working or is going well. So maybe your electric bill was a couple dollars less last month. You can say, oh honey, our electric bill was this much less last month. That's amazing. We're gonna be able to put that money toward this financial goal. And include that person in the win. Say, I'm so proud of us. I'm so proud that we lowered our bill by $10. That's amazing. Or if you managed to cut back the groceries by $5, say that you're proud that you did this as a team. Bring that person into the wins, even if you were the only one that did them. You might feel like they are just not helping and they are not on the same page, but they are your teammate. So bring them into the team and let them be part of the success that's already happening. You can praise them for the things that went well, even if it had nothing to do with them. You can use those wins to tell them how even more wins will get you even bigger, better goals. If you're only focusing on how you did well and how you are helping and how they're bringing it down, you're just dividing yourself and putting them in the place of the enemy. And once you make an adversary out of your spouse, it is really, really hard for you mentally to correct that and for them to not feel like it is a struggle. This is something I had to learn after a lot of fights with my husband and honestly therapy, because I tend to be a very self-focused, self-centered person, and that is not me putting myself down. That is just how most of us are. Let's be real. We see things from our point of view. And I could only see my husband as the enemy that was stopping me from getting to my goal. And really, he just wanted to be my teammate. And he wasn't sure of the right ways to do that, but that's all he wanted. So once I started bringing him in on the wins, he started getting more on board. And honestly, this last no spend month, I didn't plan to include him at all, but he jumped on board with me, and it made my little budgeting personal finance heart so happy because I didn't ask him to do it, but he volunteered. And that is such a far cry from where we used to be that it is honestly very amazing. And having him as a teammate is really awesome, and it's something that I had to realize I had to look for myself before it necessarily felt like he was on my team. In the beginning, all I could see was where he was my adversary, where he was stopping me from hitting my goals, where he was overspending, and where he wasn't on board. All I could see was he was not on board and he was not on my team, and that got us nowhere. That is why we struggled for so many months to actually hit our budget, and why we always went over, and why we always had a fight, and how we always had me crying at the end of it and not making as much progress. Okay, so once you've got through some of the heavy emotional stuff, do separate your spending. Do not separate your money entirely, but separate your spending. Separating our spending money was the greatest thing we have done in probably since we got married. He wanted to combine our money, and I agree, as a married couple, we should have our money combined. However, having some spending money and having some autonomy and having some freedom where the other person doesn't see everything you do with your money, it's real helpful. I firmly believe that we should be budgeting as a team and working toward our financial goals together, but having a small amount, whatever amount you decide on per month, he gets $100 per paycheck, and me not seeing that money has been amazing. It's been good for me, it's been good for him, and he has really adjusted to that freedom. And I like having money that I spend that I don't have to justify, that I don't have to track with him, that I don't have to do anything for other than enjoy myself on what I want. So set yourself a personal spending amount or an allowance, whatever you want to call it, and set that aside in an account that the other person can't see. You should have access to it, and you should be open with your money. I could log into his account, and honestly, the first couple months I did, but I do not anymore because I trust him. He's not going over. It's all good. Next tip. If you are constantly going over personal spending money or a category like groceries, then you need to adjust your budget for a realistic number. Maybe you only spent $100 a month when you were a single person on your groceries. That's awesome. You're amazing. But as a couple, maybe you're constantly spending like $400 and you think, why is he spending $300 when I can only spend $100? We should not be spending this much. However, if you're constantly fighting about this one thing, adjust your expectations and adjust your budget. Plan to spend a little more on groceries. Maybe what you can do for yourself is not realistic when you are part of a team and part of two people. Constantly setting unrealistic budget categories can make someone that's not on board rebel even further. If they feel like they are never able to get the things that they want that make their life better, maybe it's they buy a drink every morning and it just creates the perfect day for them. And if they can't get that because you don't think it's necessary and you've set the budget where it's not possible, they're probably just gonna rebel and do it anyway. So maybe adjust for that habit until they are on board and decide to cut it out themselves. It is okay to spend more money in areas where it makes your life feel better. And maybe for your spouse, those areas don't match up to what you think they should, but that's okay. And you can adjust the whole budget for that category. Honestly, adjusting up our budget for things like groceries has been a really helpful thing for our teamwork. This also worked for spending money. My husband was constantly hitting a limit on his spending money, so we increased it. And now he saves part of it and he saves up for big things, and I never have to worry about him ruining our budget because he went out and rebelled and bought something that wasn't in the budget, because we adjusted our spending and our budget categories to fit something that worked better for him, even though necessarily I wouldn't need it for myself. I need less personal money than he does, and that's okay. So this tip is very similar to the last one, but adjust your expectations. You might be the one that's super gung-ho and ready to pay off the debt and live beans and rice, and your partner just isn't about it. If they are amazing in every other aspect of life, you probably should adjust your expectations and think about how amazing they are and realize that this one area of life is not worth destroying your whole relationship. You might need to just adjust how quickly you expect them to get on board, because maybe it's going to take a lot longer than you expect. Maybe you think they should be like right there with you day one or month one, on board, ready to go, and it takes a year. You might have to just adjust your personal internal expectations so that you're not destroying something that is amazing because you expect them to do something that they're not ready to do yet. Sometimes it does take people longer to get on board with finances than you think it should. Sometimes it takes them longer to grasp the concept. Sometimes it takes them longer to break habits that are ingrained in their personality and their life that have been there for decades. You might be expecting your spouse to instantly change because it makes so much sense to you. And I mean, honestly, the math makes sense, right? But they are probably trying to overcome years, if not decades, of habits and emotions and past experience and a ton of internal stuff that we all feel about money. It can be really hard for some people to work through that quickly, and maybe you need to adjust your expectations to the fact that they're not going to do it as quickly as you think they should, because it's probably not making it easier for them to be around you and to get on board when they feel like they're constantly letting you down and not meeting expectations that they feel are unrealistic. So adjusting expectations can feel like you're taking one for the team or you're failing, but ultimately it can be giving that person the space to adjust and grasp these concepts and get on board, and really get on board because they chose it, not because they felt like you forced them into it. And finally, take your spouse to a financial class or a seminar or Financial Peace University, which is Dave Ramsey's 9-week course. I add this last because actually having the knowledge doesn't mean your spouse is going to do it. It does help some people to hear it from someone else rather than you, but that doesn't work for everyone. I actually went to Financial Peace University with my husband before we were married. It was kind of part of our premarital counseling and kind of part of just, we wanted to be better with money once we got married. But I'll be honest, it didn't really stick. It did not solve our money problems. It did not solve our money fights. And having that knowledge didn't necessarily mean our behaviors actually followed it. So Financial Peace University and similar budgeting and money classes can help, but they might not be the end all be all that you are expecting. Because honestly, knowing what to do doesn't always change someone's behavior. So while the knowledge will be helpful and hopefully will stick in there and hopefully will change their attitudes and behaviors, it doesn't work for everyone. So don't expect it to be 100%. They're completely changed. It just might not happen. So what I want you to remember from this is that there is not a one size fits all way for you to get on board with your spouse on money. There are a ton of habits, behaviors, emotions attached to how we interact and spend money, and there are all sorts of things that you might not even see when you try to interact with your spouse on creating a budget and paying off debt. You might only see the numbers, or you might only see their outward behaviors, but I promise there's a lot more behind it than generally most of us think about. And those things vary between people. So you have to find out what motivates your spouse. You have to find out what encourages them, what makes them want to do the same things as you. Likely you're not the same person, so it might not be the same thing as what has motivated you to do well with your money. It might be something entirely different, and it might take you a while to figure that out, or for them to figure it out. Sometimes spouses and people aren't on board with getting their finances in order for different reasons, and they don't always know the reasons. So you might have to be gentle with yourself and with your spouse and accept that it's not going to be an instant fix. However, it is possible with most people, I believe, to get on board and be on the same page. So if one thing doesn't work, try the next, keep trying. You have to find the things that excite and motivate and encourage your partner. So if that isn't something you've found yet, keep trying. I don't think you should throw away a relationship over this if you have the chance to keep going and find the thing that works. Of course, there are exceptions if you're in an abusive relationship or if you have been trying for 20 years and you just are done. However, if you are just at the beginning, there is hope. I am living proof that you can work with your partner to get better at money. And even when you get on the same page, remember that there's still probably going to be some disagreements and fights and differences of opinion, because we are all unique individuals and money is such an important part of our lives, and how we spend it and how we use it is very much tied to our values and what we want out of life. So make sure that you are talking to your partner and that you are being loving and encouraging and not making them the enemy. So those are my tips for getting a spouse on board. It is a struggle sometimes, so don't lose hope and don't lose faith. You married this person for a reason, you're with them for a reason, and I firmly believe that you will figure it out. So best wishes. If you have any tips for getting your spouse on board that I did not cover, there are tons of things I did not cover. So let me know in the comments down below. This can be really helpful for anyone else that finds this video. So if you've had a reluctant spouse who didn't want to get on board with budgeting or handling money well or paying off debt, let me know in the comments how you got them on board and how you guys are working as a team now. Those stories can be really, really useful for other people, and it is very encouraging to see that other people have done this, because a lot of times it feels like all of the personal finance people online are amazing with money and they have a partner that helps and is right there with them, and it can be really discouraging when you are in the middle of a fight about your budget. So let me know, let everyone else know, and thank you guys for watching. Good luck.